Southend-on-Sea, quintessential Victorian seaside destination, now one of the newest cities in Britain. As it invests and seeks to change its image into a modern, vibrant location, it was great to see an event being welcomed back into the city after a few years' hiatus. The home of the world's longest pleasure pier, which has its own railway, today became home to hundreds of motorbikes and thousands of motorbike enthusiasts for Southend Shakedown 2025. The event, which started in 1998 but hasn't run officially for the past few years, returned on Easter Bank Holiday Monday in full force, with bikes of all ages, makes and models, accompanied with bikers of all ages and experience. From young kids seeking waves and revving engines to older people reliving past days of British motorbikes as they wandered looking at the many bikes on displays. There was something for everyone, whether they were riding a motorbike or just an avid enthusiast. Bikes such as large cruisers made by Harley, Indian, and classic British bikes like Triumph and Royal Enfield sat side by side with scooters, 125s, sports bikes, adventure bikes, quad bikes, trikes, and even a tuk-tuk. Stretching from the historic Kurzel building down the seafront to Cliffs Pavilion, there was something for everyone to enjoy. The seafront was crowded with bikes and people, and I feel sorry for the poor enzyme buses which were trying to run, who had to cope with the masses of people and bikes coming and going all through the day. Along with the bikes, there was live music and stalls selling all sorts of memorabilia and clothing options for bikers. One of the event's major organisers was Ace Cafe in London, where a large contingent of motorbikes had left in the morning and headed across to Southend in Essex. They were joined by bikers from all across Essex and the whole country. Motorbike clubs and groups, solo riders, and groups of friends all joined in the fun and made the event a spectacular day. People lined both sides of the road to see various bikes turn up and make plenty of noise. The noise was spectacular. The smell of petrol and burning rubber, along with the atmosphere of thousands of biking enthusiasts, made for an unforgettable event. It was nice to see Royal Enfield motorbikes there, with various accessories on display, as it gave me a chance to assess in person things like different engine guards, or there was even a Super Meteor with aftermarket panniers. It gave me something to think about with engine guards, as they are something that I would like to put on my bike at some point, and I saw 2 or 3 options which I liked. I also liked looking at the bikes people had customised with some amazing paint jobs. There were truly unique designs on display. The Royal Enfield Super Meteor 650 took its place among various bikes and held its own looks-wise. However, when leaving in a large convoy, it reinforced that the sound the Royal Enfield makes is underwhelming with the stock exhausts. The event ran from 9 till 5, but a lot of people left about 1:30 in the afternoon, including me, as the dark rain clouds rolled in across the Thames estuary. Rain poured down not long after, but it was great leaving Southend with vintage Harleys, sports bikes and other assorted bikes all riding together. I hope that the event returns next year. It was well organised, with many volunteers and the police keeping everything in order. There was lots of fun and I didn't see any trouble there. It was a pleasure to walk around seeing all the bikes and taking it all in, as well as being a part of it by displaying my bike. Personally, it was nice to see the British seaside bustling again, as people filled the streets to see motorbikes old and new. It was my first biker event, and it certainly was a great introduction and will be a hard one to top.